You know that feeling, right? That paralyzing fear when you're staring at a blank page? Well, you're definitely not alone. But what if I told you there's a way to make that feeling a thing of the past, forever? That's exactly what we're going to unpack in this explainer.
Okay, let's just dive right in with this really powerful idea from the sociologist Niklas Luhmann. He said, one cannot think without writing. And that right there, that's our central theme. It's this idea that writing isn't just about recording your thoughts after you've had them. No, it's the very process that actually creates them.
So if that's true, if writing is so fundamental to thinking, then why is it often so painful? Why does that blinking cursor fill so many of us with dread? It doesn't quite add up, and that's the paradox we're going to unravel today.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle something called the blank page lie. Then, we'll get into the genius system that Luhmann created. After that, we'll break down exactly how smart notes work. We'll also dig into the philosophy behind it, this idea of learning to think outside the brain. And finally, we'll see how all this lets you let the work carry you. Sound good? Okay, first up, the blank page lie. And this is a big one. It turns out that almost everything we've been taught about how to write is, well, it's just wrong. It's fundamentally flawed, and honestly, it's the source of most of our struggles. Yeah, this chart right here, it just gets to the heart of the problem. We're always told that writing is the final step, right? It's what you do after all the research is done. But the reality is completely different. Writing is the learning. We're told to start with a blank page, but seriously, an effective writer never starts from scratch. And maybe the biggest lie of all, we're made to feel like it's all about willpower. Just force yourself. But what we actually need is a much smarter workflow. So what does all this mean for you? It means that if you struggle with writer's block, it is not a personal failing. It's not because you lack discipline. The problem is the system we've all been taught, this rigid, linear, step-by-step process that just doesn't work with how our brains actually come up with ideas. Okay, so if the old system is totally broken, what's the alternative? Well, let's meet the guy who figured it all out. A seriously prolific professor who built a genius system to solve this exact problem. His name was Niklas Luhmann. 58. Just let that number sink in for a second. 58. That's how many books Luhmann published over his career. And we're not just talking books. We're talking hundreds of super influential articles on, well, everything. Law, art, the economy, even love. And the crazy part? He did it all without the stress and anxiety that plagues most writers and academics. And just to put this into perspective for you, back in 1968, he becomes a professor and basically announces his life's project, to create a complete theory of society. He figured it would take him about 30 years. And guess what? Almost exactly 30 years later, he finished it. The consistency, it was just staggering, truly.
So you have to ask, how in the world did he do it? Well, when people asked him, he didn't credit his own genius. He pointed to his system. He let them in on his secret with this quote, "I, of course, do not think everything by myself. It happens mainly within the slipbox." Get that? His slipbox wasn't just some filing cabinet. It was his partner in thinking.
All right, so that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What is this slipbox, and how do these smart notes actually work? Let's break down the surprisingly simple system that let him juggle all these complex ideas like it was nothing. The whole thing is built on just 3 types of notes. It's really that simple. First, you have fleeting notes. These are just quick, temporary thoughts you jot down anywhere. Napkin, phone, whatever. Second, literature notes. This is when you're reading something and you summarize the key points, but, and this is important, in your own words. And finally, the most crucial step, permanent notes. Think of these as the real building blocks of your knowledge. This is where you really develop one single idea and, crucially, connect it to other ideas.
And all those permanent notes, they live together in one place, the slipbox. Now, the key detail here, the thing you have to get, is that the slipbox is not an archive. It's not a graveyard for old ideas. It's a living, breathing network. You don't organize it by rigid topics like, psychology or history. No, you organize it by connection, creating this incredible web of thought that's always growing and evolving.
And getting into work really just comes down to a few simple rules. Rule 1, one idea per note. That keeps it flexible so you can link it anywhere. Rule 2, write in full, clear sentences like you're explaining it to someone else. 3, and this is maybe the most important, always link to related notes. The whole goal here is to connect ideas, not just collect them. And when you do that, you'll find that topics and arguments just start to emerge on their own from the bottom up.
Okay, so that's the how. But the why? Why is this system so incredibly powerful? Well, that's what we're digging into next. This is all about the science of thinking outside your own brain, and why we all need this kind of external scaffolding for our thoughts.
You know, the neuroscientist Neil Levy put it perfectly. He said that writing things down isn't some crutch that makes thinking easier. It's what makes complex thought possible in the first place. Our minds literally depend on this kind of external help.
I mean, just think about our own brains for a second. They're amazing, no doubt, but they have some serious limitations. Our working memory? It's tiny. It can only hold, 4 to 7 things at once? We're forgetful. We're biased. But the Slipbox? It has unlimited storage. It's objective. And here's the magic. It's designed from the ground up to create those surprising, unexpected connections between ideas that our own brains would just never see. And there's this really cool psychological bonus too. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. See, our brains tend to obsess over unfinished tasks, all these open loops that just drain our mental energy. But when you capture an idea in a trusted system, like your Slipbox, you're essentially telling your brain, hey, it's okay, this is handled. That loop closes and it frees up all this mental bandwidth so you can actually focus.
So when you put all of this together, it creates a totally new way of working. We're talking about a complete transformation of your process. You get to a point where you can let the work carry you, moving away from just brute force willpower and into the flow of a really great system. What ends up happening is the system creates this amazing positive feedback loop. Instead of having to force yourself to work, the process itself starts to feel rewarding. Every little note you add is a small win. And those wins build momentum, they build motivation, which just makes you want to do more. Before you know it, the work itself is pulling you forward. And the payoff here is just huge. And listen, this isn't just about being more productive. It's about finding a fundamentally better way to work and think. You stop procrastinating because you always know what the next small step is. Writing stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like an adventure, a discovery. You'll generate insights you never saw coming, you'll feel less anxious, and you'll turn that struggle into something that's genuinely rewarding.
So, let's just end with this one question. What if you never had to face a blank page ever again? Seriously, because that's the real promise of this system. It's about shifting from the anxiety of that blank screen to the pure excitement of joining a conversation that you, yourself, have already started.